Good evening. It's my honor and privilege to welcome you to the inaugural BW Business World Nation Builders webinar, this series that we launched today with a nation builder who's not only built an institution, he's built policy, he's guided many organizations. First of all, the idea of nation builders was born because we believe that people who build institutions that serve the society and institutions that outlive them and outlive their leadership are the perfect role model to learn, to be able to build institution in the future. So let me start by welcoming in today's conversation, in the first episode of Nation Builders, a person who really needs no introduction. All of you know him. He's been very active over his last 7 decades of being at work. He is very active while he's 92. He's very, very active. Let me welcome Dr. D V Kapur, who's the founding chairman and managing director of the National Thermal Power Corporation. He's had an illustrious career in government where he served as the Secretary Power, he served as Secretary Heavy Industries, and he also served as Secretary Petrochemicals. So he's been on the board of venerable institutions like DLF, Reliance, Honda CL, Tata Chemicals, and I can go on. He served on some L&T. That's also a notable mention. He became, he was a technocrat who set up the NTPC. And in 1976, the then Prime Minister of India, Mrs. Indira Gandhi, invited him to set up NTPC. Prior to NTPC, he served on the Hirakud Dam project. He was in the Indian Railways. He was at the Bharat Heavy Electricals Limited in various positions. And I said he's been secretary to the government of India in the ministries of power, heavy industries, chemicals, and petrochemicals. He's been associated with a number of national institutions, including the Indian Institute of Technology, Mumbai, the National Productivity Council, and the Indian Institute of Management, Lucknow. In private sector, he served on the boards of Honda CL, Tata Chemicals, Larsen & Toubro, Ashok Leyland, Reliance Industries, and DLF. He summed up his experience because the World Bank looked upon his case study of how he built NTPC and how NTPC went on to serve the power needs of the country. And practically, you look at any power institution, anybody who has worked or leading the power institution has worked with Dr. D V Kapur at some point. So he became an author by writing this book called The Bloom in the Desert, The Making of NTPC, where it is a master class in project management. And today we are going to talk to Dr. D V Kapur about business organization and nation building through project management, organization structuring, and systems approach. Welcome, Shri D V Kapur. We took a little long time to introduce you, but if you have 7 decades of work, then it does take time, and we have to do justice to that. So welcome to this inaugural session of Nation Builders. We're grateful that you've joined. First of all, I'd like to start by asking you, how have been your last 16, 17 months, both personally and professionally for you?
Thank you, Anurag, for very elaborate introduction. But let's straight away come to the question. You will be surprised if I tell you that during last 17 months, I have walked out of the house only 2 times. And those 2 times were when I had to go for getting vaccination. Once in January this year and second time on 26 February this year. But there are moments of loneliness and one feels sometimes a little bored also, but most of the time I must say, with the variety of involvement I have got, professionally, academically, one of my interests is Urdu poetry, where because I can read and write Urdu, so I've got a number of books where I can devote time. And like that, today there are so many chat groups. Some of them are very active, like one where I am involved very actively, India Energy Forum, which has about 100 people. And every day there is some news, some discussion or some exchange of ideas and things like that. So time has passed on very smoothly.
Fantastic. You kept yourself, I'm sure knowing you, you kept yourself gainfully employed by reading, by engaging with other thought leaders, trying to find
I mean,
solutions.
my age certainly has started hanging on me. Mentally reasonably active, but physically my backache is problem, and I can't walk too much, or that is all within the house, etc. So that has become a handicap, but I can't complain at this age. Probably it has to come, and maybe it will increase even.
Now, again, knowing you are a very meticulous person, having known you, having prepared for this, while I prepared, you prepared even more than me. That's the nature of the kind of integrity and energy you bring to anything you do. And I think that's a great example for anyone who knows you. The kind of energy, vigor, belief you believe in anything you do. Now, let me start. Today, we're discussing business organization and nation building through project management organization, structuring, and systems approach. You have been doing this and you've seen this over the last 7 decades that India has grown. And we are celebrating 30 years of liberalization as we talk to you. We're in 2021, July 2021. But how do we build better institutions and contribute to nation building as leaders?
I think before that, I must give you a little bit of history of organization, business organization, development and growth in India. And I'll also try to touch upon what type of contributions in the present era organization can make in country's development. And lastly, what makes those organizations competent to contribute all that. So, over the ages for centuries, business organizations were built to generate profit for survival, and it was something like a mercantile activity for livelihood. But something happened in late 1700s, to begin with in England, with what is called Industrial Revolution and development of steam power. That led to a technology era which changed the world, changed our lifestyle, our way of living, our growth areas. And from Great Britain, it extended to Europe and then US. And that process is still not complete. It is still going on. And now, lately, what is happening, and the academicians call it the fourth industrial revolution, where information technology has come in. And literally, who could imagine even 30, 40 years earlier that sitting in the room like this we are doing now, a virtual meeting involving many people sitting in their homes, comfort, are all participating. So that's the technology. This is the type of developments which have been happening as a result of technology. And that, who does it? That is all these business organizations. All that industrial revolution resulted in what they call creation of these economically successful organizations as third pillar of development. Earlier to that, government and civil society were two pillars of nation development, and this era led to created a third pillar. Now, after some year, of course, another factor dimension came in, which was within the realm of organizations. But that was the deep-rooted factor of patriotism. Considerable damage to the country during World War II, Japan and West Germany to begin with. Out of this deep-rooted faith of patriotism, they recovered so fast that that became another model. And to that category, later on South Korea and countries like Taiwan, and in some form, China, not entirely because politically they had a system which is not worth following. So it was a mix, but economically their progress was on this basis. Now, they had a system which is not worth following. So in all this development, one other factor was the focus on quality education and various inputs which are required for development of human development. So all that contributed to what we see the present day Germany and Japan and of course US economy, etc. Now coming to the Indian scene, I must say I have been privileged to be associated with a number of enterprises which have made significant contributions in the process of nation building. And till early 1980s, that included mostly public sector organizations, starting with Bharat Heavy Electricals, NTPC, and Maruti. Many people may not be aware that Maruti, for first 12 years of its existence, was a public sector organization. It was only in 2003 that Mr. Suzuki was given 100% of shares. So, and I have been involved with selection of Suzuki and growth of Maruti from day one for almost 3-4 years, very, very closely. So I had the advantage of seeing all these prestigious organizations for almost for a number of years. And then the next 30 years, from 1986 onward, in between, of course, I had this spell of 6.5 years as Secretary Power, Heavy Industry, and Chemical, Petrochemical, which normally is considered very long because 6.5 years as Secretary of important ministries. But it gave me government dimension also. I got a feeling of how that works, what are the weaknesses and strengths of that, our pattern. But following that, from 88 onward, for almost 30 years, I served the boards of organizations like Tata Chemicals, L&T, Reliance, in each case almost for 15 to 20 years. So I could see how they form their boards, how they supervise, how they manage their various disciplines, whether it was Ratan Tata or whether it was Anil Ambani or various successive chairmen of L&T. I saw them very closely for almost in each case for 15 to 20 years. And each of these organizations have made phenomenal contributions. It's not only in the form of giving revenues to the government, large revenues, but also in various other forms like development of skills, managerial manpower, technology, and then how that spreads all over the system, all over the country through other organizations. And it would be interesting to give some details of 2-3 organizations as examples. I talked of Maruti, which was the forerunner of a modern car in India. And till that time, automotive sector was a small one in India, manufacturing almost for 2 decades about 50,000 cars per year. And imagine the growth in these from 93 onward till now, from 50,000 cars a year, we have reached a manufacturing capacity of almost 4 million units per year. In fact, we are exporting much more than what we were manufacturing for our own requirement earlier. And that's not all.
Small feat. It's a very
associated
big
with
feat.
associated with that is the automotive component industry, which has 2 years ago the export worth was about 14-15 billion dollars. And it is interesting to mention that automotive sector, which started even in compared to international pattern, automotive industry is not that old as say steam engine, etc., or internal combustion engine. But technological innovation like say mass production, primarily through Henry Ford in US, it revolutionized the industry. It was not something like manufacturing a car at one place. It was manufacturing hundreds and thousands of components in different places, maybe in different countries, in mass scale. And the automobile plant is only a line assembly plant which puts them together. They are all components are standardized. That is the concept, and that spread out to the rest of the manufacturing sectors. So that is how the contributions are done, and that had to be accompanied with the development of new skills and new management concepts. It led to bigger volumes, increased much larger government revenue contribution to government revenues, and lower per unit costs. All that went on more or less simultaneously. And another probably indicator would be interesting to mention. Today, the contribution of automotive sector is almost 6.5% of the GDP. In the entire manufacturing industry, it is almost 34% of the manufacturing GDP. It employs as many as 80 lakh people. A sector which I don't want to go into detail, but at one stage when we were starting with Maruti, and I was very keen to, as Secretary of Heavy Industry, that this sector should be open to other companies to modernize their cars. I got a shouting from then Finance Minister, who later became Prime Minister, VP Singh, in presence of Rajiv Gandhi as Prime Minister, telling me that, what are you talking? I am still not able to find 300 crores for foreign exchange for Maruti, and you are wanting to bring new companies. That is, we were talking of meager sums of 300 crores. which could revolutionize the country, and we were not permitted. And today, see the total volume. That is how that is where the visions come into it. Anyway, my other example is NTPC. Can you believe for the last many years now, with the installed capacity of 19 to 20%, NTPC has been meeting 25 to 26% of country's demand of electricity. You can imagine the efficiency level. With 19% capacity, you meet 26% demand. That's not all. The managerial manpower groomed by that company was in such a great demand. But again, you will be surprised to know if I tell you that every power company in India, including Tata Power, age-old company, Reliance Power, Jindal Power, Adani Power, many other companies, in each case, one or two managing directors at that level, people who have started their career as executive trainees in NTPC, they became managing directors in each of these companies. That was the recognition of the managerial development done by NTPC. In a survey which was done about 15 years earlier or so, as many as 2,000 ex-NTPC employees were working in senior positions in various private companies. I'll refer to one person by name even, Rathan Basu, who was again one of the started career as a trainee, but after some years, world's third largest company, Alstom, picked him up for a mid-level position and then gradually elevated him to the highest position in the Asia as country manager of South Asia, managing director of Indian Alstom. And in some context, he wrote to me once that I still remember his words. He said, the DNA which I acquired in NTPC still drives me to meet targets and targets for my current employees. That was the type of, so that is what is probably the reason why the culture is built up. It's not I wouldn't say it's an individual who has been built up over there. It's a culture which has been evolved. And that when the culture builds up in between some people who are not that highly efficient, even they get absorbed and the organization continues to grow. That is what has been that is the story of that organization. There are many other examples, but Tata's and Reliance have certainly made phenomenal contributions, particularly in Reliance, which is for many years now the largest company in the country. It is one of the top 50 in Fortune 500. The contribution to India's revenue by Reliance is 10%. Only one company contributing 10% of entire government's revenues. That is the type of contribution. And then beyond that, again, the skills, management development, managerial development, scientific and technology development. First they produce for themselves and then it spreads out to rest of the organizations in the country. These are the types of contributions which are nation building. So that was the transition. As I said, to begin with, there was a time when companies were only built to make profits and contribute something to the government in the form of revenues. But now, apart from this revenue portion, there are tens of other areas where the companies, and that is what is nation building. So let's come to the next stage. What is so special? How these organizations get built up that they can contribute so much to the nation building? I mean, I agree unfortunately, there are few in number still. We have got to create many, many more organizations. But all the same, in substance, what is that which goes behind this organization? And in that analysis, I have identified three parameters, all management parameters. Not that these three alone are, if a book is written on the total development of business, there will be some other parameters. But these three, to my mind, are very important. Not only very important, they have been neglected in India. And the companies which I refer to as success stories, if you go into that, they have not neglected those companies. That is the difference. And that is why this is important. First is project management. We are familiar with the term cost overruns and time overruns. Cost overruns reduce the profits of a company, which certainly inhibits its growth. But the statistics I'll give you later, which are nothing but national loss, are so humongous and mind-boggling. But before I give you, I thought it would be useful for your audience if I explain in layman's language, what do I mean by project management? And the simplest example I could think of was of two households with similar income and similar family profile, ordinary families, simple housewife, uneducated. But in one case, when you visit the house, you find everything is in order, housekeeping, children are well behaved and neatly clad. Every member of the family follows the organized routine from morning till bedtime. Housewife prepares its budget and controls the expenditure. Whereas in the second house, when you go with the same income and same profile, it's utter confusion. Less said, the better about that. What is the explanation? In my language, it is the one lady is a project manager. She may be uneducated, but literally she is doing all those control systems which on a large scale a project manager in a big organization is doing. Now when we expand this concept, today project management is a very, very elaborate and extensive management system. And it didn't start very long ago. It started with something like what is normally called PERT network. And the PERT network was invented in 1957 for a naval project in US. And then its application and scope has been expanding and expanding. What is the PERT network? Today's PERT network in big organization would be a network chart consisting of few hundred or few thousand activities. all put sequentially and interconnected, linked together with the associated activities. It also includes responsibility centers. And then as the project or industry progresses, the monitoring starts. And the monitoring has to be right from the beginning. It's a 4-year project, but even in 3rd month, the monitoring is going on about the activities which should have been completed in 3rd month, which is something which is not happening in most of our armies. They realize the delays only when they are nearing the target date. Now, I had mentioned that these cost overruns, which I call them national loss, after cost overrun is something which is, most of the cost overruns are interest during construction. And interest during construction in a balance sheet would be shown as finance charge.
Right.
The finance charge, if 100 rupees finance charge is reduced to 20, which means you have created an additional 80 rupees profit. That is why more the cost overruns are, the less is the future growth possibilities. And here, to give you the statistics, what I've done is, I have dug out some government statistics so that there is no controversy on authenticity of the figure. I was talking about the government report. There is the Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation in Government of India, which submitted a report quite recently in February 2021, which talks about 1,736 projects, central projects, each worth 150 crores or more. The total estimated expenditure to be incurred on all these projects was estimated as 22 lakh crores. We're talking of large sums. 22 lakh crores was the total expenditure to be incurred on these 1,736 projects. According to report, cost overruns of only 44% of the projects has already reached a figure of 4.2 lakh crores.
4.2 lakh crores. That's a
it
very
has already
large
reached
number.
44 projects. For balance projects, 930 balance projects, see that again the lack of discipline. They have not reported to the government their delays. And the ministry still forwards that report to the parliament, and that they have not reported. Anyway, that's a separate issue, what type of discipline needs to be created. And the report also shows, elaborates in words, the causes for delays in commissioning these, progressing these projects. And they are quite what people are used to. Delay in land acquisition, tying up finances, finalization of detailed drawings. Drawings couldn't be finalized in time. Tendering, ordering, and supply of equipment, it all delays. Many of these are controllable factors if they are planned properly and monitored properly, and that is what happens in the project management system. Now, I had mentioned earlier that major part of these overruns is interest during construction. But what would be interesting that if this exercise is expanded a little further to cover those projects which are still unreported, central projects. Hundreds of projects of state governments, which many of them we know are in a bad shape. They go behind schedule. And some projects even in the private sector, in some companies which are not well organized. If all of these are put together as national loss, I wouldn't be surprised if it is 4 or 5 times or more of those 4.29 crores, which has already been referred. In other words, it could be as high as 15 to 20 lakh crores. So 15 to 20 lakh crores spread over 2, 3 years or 4 years. Per year, you can imagine what is it. And if that amount cash, every day we see the news, the government struggles for thousands of crores only. Here there is lakhs of crores, which are nobody is talking about them. Parliament has never discussed these reports. We're used to very noisy electronic media debates in every evening. Have you ever heard a debate on the cost overruns in the project which is causing the loss of lakhs of crores to the country? That is why I picked up project management as something most important area for the company. And imagine project management is not only for a capital intensive project. Take a ministry or policies and programs. Don't get education policy or education programs or health programs or various other programs. Do they get implemented in time? I mean, I'm often asked this question: Should bureaucrats become project manager? No, I am not saying. I don't mean they should become specialists, but they have got to have exposure to project management and follow for implementation of a policy or program. A project management network can be easily prepared and followed, and that would produce the results. A secretary of the economic ministry monitors projects of various public sector organizations under him. His exposure to the project manager would enable him to ask the right questions in time.
So that I'm sure everyone on this broadcast understands why project management is key to nation building. In the way Mr. D V Kapur explained in terms of numbers, you understand if this money was saved and went into, say, infrastructure projects, healthcare, education, imagine the impact, the social impact it would have had. Go on, Mr. Kapur.
I have, as I said, I have spent 6-7 years as secretary to government. I have seen our bureaucrats very closely. And I must say, I am always impressed. Intellectually, they are brilliant people. There couldn't have been better selection from the as cream of the country at the time of induction. But what is missing is training aspect. These aspects these are not covered in the induction training, and there is no system of periodical training after every 1 or 2 or 3rd year in Government of India. In any large multinational, you will find one of the, and even some of the major Indian organizations now, that every manager or executive has got to undergo few days training, if not every year, once in 2 years or once in 3 years. And that is what enables them to keep up to date with what is new ideas are developed, new technologies are developed. Their nomenclature, knowing that much is not important. A little more is required.
Absolutely.
And that comes
Yeah, and I was
That
going to
comes
ask
through
you this question.
that is what comes through the training period.